Gremlins, it might just be September, but Halloween is approaching and I want to be prepared. For the past 3 years, every Halloween, I've drawn 3 Halloween-themed frogs, some turning out better than others. This year, I want to change things up a bit. Rather than thinking of 3 more spooky archetypes to fill with frogs, I'm instead going to redraw all the designs I've made already and turn those frogs into a set of stickers. These sticker sheets are now available on my Etsy, and I'm posting this video early so that there's plenty of time for stickers to arrive before Halloween. I'm redrawing these frogs in chronological order, so that means I'll be starting with the witch frog, which I drew in 2022 as part of my second video ever. The original composition involved 2 frogs, one sitting on top of the other, both perched on a broomstick. The smaller frog has a pointed witch hat. I changed the composition quite a bit for the redraw. First, I removed the second frog. I'm keeping it to 1 frog per sticker. Second, I wanted to make the whole image look more dynamic, so rather than a straight broom seen side on, I rotated it so that it's pointing more towards the viewer and it feels more like it's being flown at speed, rather than hovering in mid-air. I made several sketches of different compositions before deciding on my favorite. I ended up choosing my third sketch, with the frog tilted slightly to the side as if steering the broom wildly. The handle of the broom is pointed almost directly to the viewer, and the whole image sits in front of a huge crescent moon. In the past 3 years, I've been inconsistent with the way I style the frogs. Some years I use colored outlines, some years black. One year I shaded all the frogs, but not the other years. Sometimes I do somewhat detailed backgrounds, other times I don't. In the redraw, I'm trying to make all those disparate details unified again. I'll be using colored outlines, thick lines for the edges of objects and thinner lines for the details. I will not be using shading and all my colors will be flat. There will be no backgrounds since these will be stickers. At first I made the witch frog a slightly lighter shade of the larger frog from my original drawing, and I made the band around the brim of the hat the color of the second, smaller frog. However, the 2 shades of green kind of clashed, and I wanted to make the image look more unified, so a lot later in the process I changed the band to match the cooler green of the frog's body. I kept the method of coloring these frogs the same across all relevant stickers. Every frog that doesn't have a different trait overriding it has a pale underbelly and tips of their fingers and toes, and large black eyes with white highlights. I tried making this frog's witch hat a very dark greenish grey rather than completely grayscale, but it was at this point that I realized the colors in this image were not unified enough. Before I started making changes though, I started experimenting with the background. Due to the pale color of the moon, I thought this sticker might need to be on a black background, but that made the hat nearly disappear and just didn't look as good. When actually producing these stickers, I ended up getting them printed on clear vinyl anyway, so the background of each sticker will be whatever color the surface is behind it. At this point, I started trying to fix the colors of the image. I leaned into full grayscale for the hat and recolored the hat band and the string around the broomstick bristles to keep everything green in the same hue. And this first sticker design is done. Now, we come to the ghost frog. This frog is also from my first Halloween video, and its design does not hold up well. There are also quite a few effects present that will not translate to my sticker style, including translucency, gradients, and glow effects, so I'm having to make quite a few changes to the design to get the spooky factor from elsewhere. Once again, I started the process by drawing several concept sketches. The first one was the closest copy to the old design and also looked the worst. The second had merit, but I created a third sketch along the same vein to perfect the idea I had. This ghost frog has their front legs splayed apart, and the rest of its body is incorporeal, a cloudy mass shedding blobs of blue smoke. It almost looks like it's dripping. The frog's mouth is open and its eyes are blank white. I used a slightly more green-tinted blue for the colors, since almost all the other frogs I'm drawing are green, and I didn't want this ghost to be left out. Since I'm avoiding using gradients or non-solid colors for these stickers, I found a different way to convey the frog's form fading out toward the scattered edges. I made the ghost two-toned, with lighter smoke near the bottom and the transition being an almost slime-like pattern of drips. I recolored parts of the outline to match this tone shift, and then this ghost frog redesign was done. The final frog from the first year's design isn't necessarily Halloween specific, it's themed around spooky glowing mushrooms. This frog has a glowing blue mushroom for a hat, and is sitting on a human skull surrounded by smaller versions of the same mushroom. I'm keeping my composition fairly similar for this frog, but the end result will look very different, because I can't do glowy effects with my stickers, and so completely changed the look of the mushrooms. I started my sketch with a human skull, facing the other direction from the older drawings, but that design choice didn't have much meaning behind it. I'm pretty sure my reference image was just facing differently, and I didn't think to change it. Then there's the frog perched on the skull, same as before with a mushroom cap on its head. The frog's coloring is a very dark green, and I'm keeping it the same color in my redraw, although a slightly lighter green on the belly and feet. The mushrooms, however, are now orangish brown rather than glowing blue. Since I can't make the mushrooms glow, I figured I could at least make them look Halloween colored. The skull is the same pale beige as before, and the little chunk of land visible below it for the mushrooms to sprout from is still a mossy green. My final step was making the mushrooms a little more vibrant, more orange than brown, and the first set of stickers is redesigned. Now we come to the 2023 designs, starting with a frog that is more cute than spooky. This is just a normal, happy frog sitting on a jack-o'-lantern, surrounded by smaller pumpkins. This is also the design from this year that I liked the most, and other than adding a bit more form to the pumpkins, I changed very little about the composition in my redraw. I didn't even need multiple sketches. The line art of this drawing took quite a while. There are a lot of different colored shapes to outline, and each new color needed a new layer. This is why I don't often use entirely colored outlines. I'm keeping the colors pretty consistent from the original drawing, although I did turn one pumpkin green for a bit of variety. These new pumpkins have very pronounced ridges, which makes them more interesting visually than my old, simplified pumpkin designs. The jack-o'-lantern looks almost exactly the same though, although I wasn't able to add glowing effects to his eyes. I really like the color palette for this frog. It's a very warm and autumnal palette. The frog himself is a light yellowish green, and in the redesign I gave him a pale belly and toes. All the greens in this image are very warm, and they go excellently with the rusty oranges and yellows of the pumpkins and candlelight. And this design too is complete. I'm really happy with this sticker, the frog is just so cute. Next up, we have a frog that I was super proud of when I drew it 2 years ago, but now I know I can draw this idea better. This is the zombie frog. I'm keeping the general composition the same for this frog. It's a frog posed like it's crawling up a vertical surface, which also means it's the least round frog I've drawn so far in this video, and the first frog to have a truly different pose. I did still try to make this version of the frog rounder than my original illustration to try and match the proportions of all the other frogs. I also sketched a very neutral pose first, then manipulated the limbs to make the pose look less like a frog stuck in place and more like a frog crawling. This frog is also the first frog modeled after an actual species, rather than just the vibe of a frog. While not a perfect match, my original illustration is inspired by a black-eyed tree frog with the orange toes and bright green coloring. While when I first do the outlines I don't keep the orange toes, instead outlining the whole frog's flesh in green, I will go back and add orange in the detail stage to keep that tree frog inspiration. Parts of this frog have rotted away, leaving exposed flesh or bones poking out from the skin, and its eyes are a blank milky white. There is an accuracy error in my original illustration that I'm fixing. The original frog had visible ribs, which frogs don't actually have. Now, the frog has visible vertebrae instead. One leg is completely skeletal now, and only one foot doesn't have any toes with visible bones. The edges where the green frog flesh meets bare bones are ragged and red. I think the frog is still achieving being cute, but it's probably the most gory frog I've designed. Finally, I gave this frog its orange toes and colored its visible insides red. I thought the frog would be finished here, but I then remembered the original illustration also has patches of moss growing out of the frog's back, so I went back and added some extra outlines and green fuzzy growths. And now this zombie frog is ready to terrorize the living. Next up, we have the frog design I liked the least out of all my old drawings. Even when I first drew this vampire frog, I was not happy with the result. It just didn't feel like what I was going for, and I didn't know how to fix it. I went into this illustration knowing that I needed to make some major changes to the pose and design to make this a frog I'm proud of. And I started brainstorming with many rough sketches. Some ideas involved coffins, others stakes. In the end, I ended up choosing 2 different poses, planning to finish each and choose my favorite. Well, I couldn't choose a favorite, so this is the only frog that ended up with 2 different sticker designs. The first design I began to expand was the frog perched on top of his coffin. He has fangs and a batwing-inspired cape down his back, and his coffin is decorated with engraved lily pad. I also added blood drips coming from the corners of this frog's mouth. The colors of the frog himself are taken directly from the old illustration. Dark olive green skin, bright red eyes, and a black cape. The second design I worked on involves a different frog climbing up a wooden stake. I used images of actual frogs perched on branches or plant stems to figure out the limb placement for this drawing. The colors for this drawing are more removed from the original illustration. The frog herself is a slightly darker shade of green, and instead of a plain black cape, her cape is lined in red. Here are the 2 vampire frogs. I'd love to know which design you prefer in the comments. Both designs will be present in the stickers I'm selling of these frogs. And now we come to the most recent frog designs, the frogs I drew last year. First up, we have the Frankenstein's monster frog, based on the pop culture design of the monster, not the book. Honestly, I'm still really happy with this frog design, so I kept it pretty much the same, just changing it from having blended shading to flat colors. I started with the full outline of the body shape, then added slightly dull eyes and bolts, before going back to the body and differentiating the different sewn together sections with 3 different shades of muted green. I'm even keeping the placement of those stitch lines the same as my original design, although some of the colors are switched around. The stitches themselves are small and black, most are straight stitches and a few are X's for variety. One eye, the right front foot, and the left back foot are pale green. The main body is a mid-range green, and the left front foot and the right back upper leg are dark green. I'm using the frogs left and right for reference, rather than the left and right for the viewer. And here is the Frankenstein's monster frog, and we move on to our penultimate frog, the Grim Reaper. I changed this frog's pose a bit more than the previous one, and so once again created several sketch options and chose the one I liked best. The pose ended up being one where the frog is floating face on with the handle of their scythe held diagonally across the body, the blade held above their head. It's a simple change from the previous illustration where the scythe is held off to the side, but it feels more unified and better for a sticker now. Again, I'm keeping the colors the same, color picking from the non-shaded parts of the image. The frog's tattered robes are black and the skin light green. I'm actually really proud of the upgrade to their robes since last year. The sleeves feel much more like loose tattered sleeves, with the insides visible where they've fallen down the frog's arms. Overall, I just really like the composition of the robe. The final touches were the shiny highlights of the scythe and the shadows on the inside of the robe's sleeves, and the Grim Reaper frog is finished. The final frog to design this Halloween season is a skeleton frog. It is just a frog skeleton, reanimated and crawling around. I used several scientific diagrams of actual frog skeletons to draw it, trying my best to be accurate with my cartoon style. I drew this frog in the same method I used last year, drawing the frog completely stiff and symmetrical like the diagrams, and then using the lasso tool and transform tool to move the limbs around until it looks like it's in motion. This frog is basically all one color, which makes my job pretty easy for the last design. I started with my dark beige outlines, using a thinner brush around detailed bits like the toes and vertebrae. I colored the skeleton in a lighter beige, with dark brown inside the eye sockets. I then realized I didn't really like the colors, so I recolored everything with a slightly more yellow cast to it, and with that, the final frog redraw is done. Here is the layout of all the frogs as they would come on a sticker sheet. I spent quite a while making sure all the frogs would fit with enough space between them for the stickers to be cut out. When shipped to you, however, the sheet may have to be cut into pieces, carefully around all the stickers, to fit in an envelope. And here's the most exciting part. These are the sticker sheets in real life. I only ordered a few of them for now, but I can and will easily order more if these sell well. These stickers are printed on clear vinyl with white ink behind the designs, so the designs are opaque, but the edges are transparent, so they'll go well on any colored surface. I don't have space for every sticker yet, but here are a few on my laptop, on my water bottle, and on my sketchbook cover. If you like these designs and want spooky frog stickers for yourself, my Etsy is linked in the description. I also still have a vampire-themed hoodie for sale, as well as both Halloween-themed and regular hand-painted t-shirts, and a downloadable Griffin poster. Any support really helps me out, whether it's buying from my Etsy or just liking and commenting on my video. Enjoy spooky season, and until next time, bye! Should probably not be doing this full tight list, but we're doing it anyway.